Section 69 of All About Coffee. This is a Librivox recording. All Librivox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit librivox.org. Read to you by J.P. Liao. All About Coffee by William Ukers. Coffee making in Europe in the 19th century. England. We have noted Count Rumford's efforts to reform coffee making in England in the early parts of the 19th century. Many other scientific men joined the movement. Along with them was Professor Donovan, who, in the Dublin Philosophical Journal for May 1826, told of his experiments to ascertain the best methods for extracting all the virtues inherent in the berry. The Penny Magazine, for June 14, 1834, after deploring the straw-colored fluid commonly introduced under the misnomer of coffee in England, thus digests Professor Donovan's findings. Mr. Donovan found that what we shall call the medicinal quality of coffee resides in it independent of its aromatic flavor, that it is possible to obtain the exhilarating effect of the beverage without gratifying the palate, and, on the other hand, that all the aromatic quality may be enjoyed without its producing any effect upon the animal economy. His object was to combine the two. The roasting of coffee is requisite for the production of both these qualities, but to secure them in their full degree, it is necessary to conduct the process with some skill. The first thing to be done is to expose the raw coffee to the heat of a gentle fire in an open vessel, stirring it continually until it assumes a yellowish color. It should then be roughly broken, a thing very easily done, so that each berry is divided into about 4 or 5 pieces, when it must be put into the roasting apparatus. This, as most commonly used, is made out of sheet iron, and is of a cylindrical shape. It no doubt answers the purpose well, and this by no means a costly machine, but coffee may be very well roasted in a common iron or earthenware pot, the main circumstances to be observed being the degree to which the process is carried, and the prevention of partial burning by constant stirring. One of the requisites for having good coffee is that it shall have been recently roasted. Coffee should be ground very fine for use, and only at the moment when it is wanted, or the aromatic flavor will come in some measure be lost. To extract all its good qualities, the powder requires 2 separate and somewhat opposing modes of treatment, but which do not offer any difficulty when explained. On the one hand, the fine flavor would be lost by boiling, while, on the other, it is necessary to subject the coffee to that degree of heat in order to extract its medicinal quality. The mode of processing, which, after many experiments, Mr. Donovan found to be the most simple and efficacious for attaining both these ends, was the following. The whole water to be used must be divided into 2 equal parts. 1/2 must be put first to the coffee cold, and this must be placed over the fire until it just comes to a boil, when it must be immediately removed. Allowing it then to subside for a few moments, the liquid must be poured off as clear as it will run. The remaining half of the water, which during this time should have been on the fire, must be added at a boiling point to the grounds and placed on the fire, where it must be kept boiling for about 3 minutes. This will extract the medicinal virtue, and if then the liquid be allowed again to subside, and the clear fluid be added to the first portion, the preparation will be found to combine all the good properties of the berry in as great perfection as they can be obtained. If any fining ingredients is used, it should be mixed with the powder at the beginning of the process. Several kinds of apparatus, some of them very ingenious in their construction, have been proposed for preparing coffee, but they are all made upon the principle of extracting only the aromatic flavor, while Professor Donovan's suggestions not only enable us to accomplish that desired object, but superadd the less obvious but equally essential matter of extracting and making our own all the medicinal virtues. When Webster and Parkes published their Encyclopedia of Domestic Economy, London, 1844, they gave the following as the most usual method of making coffee in England. Put fresh ground coffee into a coffee pot. with a sufficient quantity of water and set this on the fire until it boils for a minute or two. Then remove it from the fire. Pour out a cupful, which is to be returned into the coffee pot to throw down the grounds that may be floating. Repeat this and let the coffee pot stand near the fire, but not on too hot a place, until the grounds have subsided to the bottom. In a few minutes, the coffee will be clear without any other preparation. It may be poured into cups. In this manner, with good materials in sufficient quantity and proper care, excellent coffee may be made. The most valuable part of the coffee is soon extracted, and it is certain that long boiling dissipates the fine aroma and flavor. Some make it a rule not to suffer the coffee to boil, but only to bring it just to the boiling point. But it is said by Mr. Donovan that it requires boiling for a little time to extract the whole of the bitter, in which he conceives much of the exhilarating qualities of the coffee reside. This work also had the following to say on the clearing of coffee, which was then a much mooted question. The clearing of coffee is a circumstance demanding particular attention. After the heaviest parts of the grounds have settled, there are still fine particles suspended for some time, and if the coffee be poured off before these have subsided, the liquor is deficient in that transparency which is one test of its perfection. For coffee not well cleared has always an unpleasant bitter taste. In general, the coffee becomes clear by simply remaining quiet for a few minutes, as we have stated. But those who are anxious to have it as clear as possible employ some artificial means of assisting the clearing. The addition of a little isinglass, hartshorn shavings, skins of eels or soles, white of eggs, eggshells, etc., has been recommended for clearing, but it is evident that these substances, to produce their effect, which is upon the same principle as the finding of beer or wine, should be dissolved previously, for if put in without, it would require so much time to dissolve that the flavor of the coffee would vanish. Coffee-making devices of this period in England, in addition to the Rumford type of percolator and the popular coffee bacon, included Evans' machine provided with a tin air float, to which was attached a filter bag containing the coffee, Jones's apparatus, a pumping percolator, Parker's steam fountain coffee maker, which forced the hot water upward through the ground coffee, Patlow's patent filter, previously mentioned, a single vacuum glass percolator in combination with an urn, Brain's vacuum or pneumatic filter employing a muslin, linen, or chamois leather filter and an exhausting pump designed for kitchen use, and Palmer's and Beart's pneumatic filtering machine of similar construction. Cold infusions were common, the practice being to let them stand overnight, to be filtered in the morning and only heated, not boiled. Coffee grinding for these various types of coffee makers was performed by iron mills, the portable box mill being most favored for family use. It consisted of a square box either of mahogany or iron japanned, containing in the interior a hollow cone of steel with sharp grooves on the inside. Into this fits a conical shape of hardened iron or steel having spiral grooves cut upon its surface and capable of being turned round by a handle. There was a drawer to receive the finely ground coffee. Larger wall mills employed the same grinding mechanism. In 1855, Dr. John Dorian wrote in his Table Traits, "With regard to the making of coffee, there is no doubt that the Turkish method of pounding the coffee in a mortar is indefinitely superior to grinding it in a mill, as with us. But after either method, the process recommended by M. Sawyer may be advantageously adopted, namely, put 2 ounces of ground coffee into a stewpan, which set upon the fire, stirring the coffee round with a spoon until quite hot, then pour over a pint of boiling water. Cover over closely for 5 minutes. Pass it through a cloth, warm again, and serve." From Observations by G. W. Poor, M.D., London, 1883, we are given a glimpse of coffee making in England in the latter part of the 19th century. He said, "Those who wish to enjoy really good coffee must have it fresh roasted. On the continent, in every well-regulated household, The daily supply of coffee is roasted every morning. In England, this is rarely done. If roasted coffee has to be kept, it must be kept in an airtight vessel. In France, coffee used to be kept in a wrapper of waxed leather, which was always closely tied over the contained coffee. In this way, the coffee was kept from contact with any air. The Viennese say that coffee should be kept in a glass bottle closed with a bung, and that coffee should on no account be kept in a tin canister. The coffee having been roasted, it has to be reduced to a coarse powder before the infusion is made. The grinding and the powdering of coffee should be done just before it is wanted. For if the whole coffee seeds quickly lose their aroma, how much more quickly will the aroma be dissipated from coffee, which has been reduced to a fine powder? Nothing need to be said in the matter of coffee mills. They are common enough, varied enough, and cheap enough to suit all tastes. To ensure a really good cup of coffee, attention must be given to the following points. 1. Be sure that the coffee is good in quality, freshly roasted and freshly ground. 2. Use sufficient coffee. I have made some experiments on this point, and I have come to the conclusions that 1 ounce of coffee to a pint of water makes poor coffee. 1.5 ounces of coffee to a pint of water makes fairly good coffee. 2 ounces of coffee to a pint of water makes excellent coffee. 3. As to the form of coffee pot, I have nothing to say. The varieties of coffee machines are very numerous, and many of them are useless encumbrances. At the best, they cannot be regarded as absolutely necessary. The Brazilians insist that coffee pots should on no account be made of metal, but that porcelain or earthenware is alone permissible. I have been in the habit of late of having my coffee made in a common jug provided with a strainer, and I believe there's nothing better. 4. Warm the jug. Put the coffee into it. Boil the water and pour the boiling water on the coffee, and the thing is done. 5. Coffee must not be boiled, or at most it must be allowed just to come to a boil, as Cook says. If violent ebullition takes place, the aroma of the coffee is dissipated, and the beverage is spoiled. The most economical way of making coffee is to put the coffee into a jug and pour cold water upon it. This should be done some hours before the coffee is wanted, overnight, for instance, if the coffee be required for breakfast. The light particles of coffee will imbibe the water and fall to the bottom of the jug in course of time. When the coffee is to be used, stand the jug in a saucepan of water or a bain-marie and place the outer vessel over the fire until the water contained in it boils. The coffee in this way is gentle, brought to the boiling point without violent ebullition, and we get the maximum extract without any cost of aroma. Always make your coffee strong. Café au lait is much better if made with 1/4 strong coffee and 3/4 milk. Then, if made half and half with a weaker coffee, this is evident. It is a mistake to assume that coffee cannot be made without a great deal of costly and cumbersome apparatus. The continent. Rossignon has given us a general view of coffee making on the continent of Europe in the middle of the 19th century. He says, formerly, small bags of baize were used to percolate coffee. The water was poured on the coffee, and when they were new, the coffee percolated through them was pretty good. But when they had been used a few times, they became greasy, and it was very difficult to clean them by any means. The greasy baize altered the quality of the coffee, and in spite of all efforts to keep it clean, the coffee had a tarnished appearance, very disagreeable to the view. Very few persons use them at present. The apparatus most in use for the percolation of coffee is a tin coffee cup composed of 2 parts. The upper part has a filter or sieve on which the coffee powder is placed and through which the filtered coffee must pass. Boiling water is poured on the coffee. The liquor, which percolates, falls in the second part. Then the upper part is removed and the coffee is ready as a beverage. There are many systems of coffee pots. One of the best is the Russian one. which consists of a receptacle composed of two parts resembling two halves of an egg screwed together. One part contains the hot water and the other the ground coffee. In the center, there's a filter. Turning the pot upside down, the percolation takes place very slowly and no aroma is lost. The tin plate, which is generally used to make the coffee pot, has many drawbacks. One of them is the dissolution of iron, which takes place after it has been used for a short time. The quality of coffee, as a beverage, depends principally on the degree of heat of the water. Experience has shown that a medium class of coffee prepared at a moderate heat gives a very good liquor, while excellent coffee on which boiling water has been poured did not give a very good liquor. Therefore, instead of pouring boiling water at 100 degrees Celsius in a porcelain or silver coffee pot, those who desire to make a perfect coffee must use water heated from 60 to 75 degrees Celsius. 3 well-known makes of large coffee urns. France. Also about the middle of the 19th century, the French naturalist de Jour thus describes one manner of making coffee in France. Let the powder be poured into the coffee pot filled with boiling water in the proportion of the 2 ounces and a half to 2 pounds or 2 English pints of water. Let the mixture be stirred with a spoon, and the coffee pot be soon taken off the fire, but suffered to remain closely shut for about at least 2 hours on the warm ashes of a wood fire. During the infusion of the liquor should be several times agitated by a coffee frother, or something of the same kind, and finally left for about a quarter of an hour to settle. Café au lait was not made by boiling coffee and milk together, as milk was not proper to extract the coffee. The coffee was first made as a café noir, only stronger, as much of this coffee was poured in the cup was required, and the cup was then filled with boiled milk. Café à la crème was made by adding boiled cream to strong, clear coffee and heating them together. In France, during the latter part of the 19th century, coffee was roasted over charcoal fires in earthenware dishes or saucepans, stirred with a spatula or wooden spoon, or in small cylinder or globular roasters of iron. Gas roasting was also practiced. When roasted in large batches, the beans were cooled in wicker baskets, tossed into the air. The grinding was preferably done in mortars or in box mills of pyramid shape with receiving drawers, and was not too fine. The usual method of making coffee in France among the better classes at this time was by means of improving de la Boy drip devices, double glass vacuum filters, pumping percolators, double circulation devices, the Russian egg-shaped pots, and the Viennese machines. The last named were metal pumping percolators with glass tops, usually swung between the uprights of a carrying arrangement, the base of which held a spirit lamp. Among the numerous French machines which became well known were Paris glass filter, a gross steam cloth filter machine, and Malin's percolator apparatus, both designed for barracks and ships, where previously the coffee had been brewed in soup kettles. Boulain-Müller's steam percolator, Laurent's whistling coffee pot, a steam percolator which announced when the coffee was ready, Ed Loisel's rapid filter, a hydrostatic percolator, and those pots to which Maurice, Lamar, Grandin, Gripple, and Grandin gave their names. In 1892, the French Minister of War detected that, in the army roasting and grinding operations, the coffee shaft should no longer be thrown away, as it had been found that it was rich in caffeine and aroma constituents. Coffee à la minute, which appeared in France in the 19th century, was made by decoction or infusion through a funnel pierced with holes and covered inside with blotting paper or a woolen strainer cloth. This system, says Jardin, suggested the economical coffee pot. A popular German drip coffee maker of the late 19th century employs a plug in the spout which provides air pressure to hold back the infusion until the plug is removed. Pierre Joseph Bushaus, physician of the King of Poland in 1787, made a business of supplying roasted coffee in small packets, each sufficient for 1 cup. He built up quite a trade until one day he was caught substituting roasted rye for coffee. This was the Bushaus method of making coffee, much practiced by the lower class because he was looked upon as an authority. Boil the water in a coffee pot. When it boils, draw it from the fire long enough to add 1 ounce of coffee powder to a pound of water. Stir with a spoon. Return it to the fire, and when it boils, move it back somewhat from the heat and let it simmer for 8 minutes. Clarify with sugar or deerhorn powder. End of section 69, read to you by J.P. Liao, Vancouver, Canada, November 6, 2022.